I know many of you are really excited to dive into your actual role. And some of the questions that pop up at the beginning for people before really going into the nuances of the relationships and the partners are revisiting the job description and really making sure they're clear on what are the responsibilities and expectations as a member of this program. And so hopefully we'll cover everything, or at least the strong pieces that you need to know and able to have a clear sense of what will be expected of you in your role. This may have come up in your interview process, but in case it didn't, in addition to being, a resource to students and faculty and community partners, the SLTA program has really grown to be a student leadership program and not just a role that people fulfill. And as such, we have learning outcomes for our program. So a lot of our, or most of our activities, our trainings, and things that we ask of you are tied back to these. And so upon completion of the first semester in the program, as an SLTA, as a leader, you should be able to, and these are focused on, managing different stakeholders, and so that professional relationships can be optimized, really thinking about how you adapt and adopt your communication styles to different audiences, being able to demonstrate critical reflection of your own service through various activities, being able to identify and summarize your own leadership strengths, and really, this last one is around problem solving, but generating creative solutions to challenges that are really grounded in history and feasibility. So as we go through the semester, remember, this is about your learning just as much as it is everyone else's experience too. So I've broken this down into kind of two pieces, at least the job description. What I'm calling the big picture stuff and the small bit stuff. And so a lot of this, at least the big picture pieces, should sound familiar, right? So we are a work hard, play hard group. So this picture's from one of our past end of semester celebrations. Some people getting real competitive and in racing. But to break it down, kind of the big picture stuff that's expected of you. First, of course, is to complete all of the training modules that we have, as well as preparations for the semester. And for some of you, that includes attending or participating in the partnership orientation at the beginning of the semester. It includes talking with your faculty member in preparation for the first day of class, and a later module will talk about introducing students to service learning and what that looks like, making sure you've made contact with your community partners and so forth. So a couple things usually about the week leading up to the semester. Starting on the first day of class, you'll then attend every class session. Unless we have already made an arrangement where that is not the case, the expectation is that you are there every day. And so if you are running into a situation where you're not going as often for whatever reason, that's something you should be talking with your team manager about. And we'll talk about the role of the team manager a little bit more in depth a few slides later. Again, this shouldn't be a surprise to everyone, but we meet every Wednesday night as a full group at 6 p.m. And this is really important. The schedule will be up on Basecamp. Again, we'll talk about what that means. But this is a time for you to connect with your group, with your team manager, to talk through the logistics, and I'll talk what this looks like. But what's really important is that you have every Wednesday night carved out on your schedule. Or if you happen to be in a group that has an academic conflict and you're meeting a different day, the same rules apply. It just is a different time and space. The other big things that you will be doing really is practicing professional and timely communication. For some of you, this feels really easy. For some of you, this might be the first professional role that you're in. And so no matter what, everyone can be better at communication all the time. We're always learning. I'm always learning. And so this is something that is just kind of expected of you as part of your role. And then finally, and not very tangible, but taking that time to build that rapport with your faculty member, your students, your team manager, the street team members, we'll talk about them, and your community partners. So there's no tried and true way of how to do this. You need to figure out what that needs to look like for you, and there are people to help support you if you're not feeling as though you're successful in building those relationships. But I really believe that relationships are the way that help us get our work done and work collaboratively. So taking the time to invest in those is really important. Now, the smaller bits. I will say in advance, you don't need to memorize all of this when it's due. The details are coming later, but I want to put them on your radar so that when they do come up later in the semester, they don't take you by surprise, okay? They're built into the calendar. You'll get plenty of heads up, so don't worry about all of that. Again, I just want you to be aware. So the first one is that every SLTA is actually going to participate in one-on-one meetings with their team manager. And this typically happens at the beginning, the middle, and end of the semester. So this is to help you work towards your goals, work on building that relationship, right? So we're already carving out time and space for that to happen, particularly with your team manager, and also for any feedback can go in both directions. We also ask SLTAs to submit and work towards a SMART goal. So if you've never heard of SMART goals, don't worry, we'll give you a little intro to what those are. But really, we have our learning outcomes for the program of, what we anticipate you learning that is intentional, but we also want to help you work towards your goals and your professional goals. As a program, we also have something called checkpoints. So essentially what they are is about once a month, just a quick online, where you at with your class, when are you meeting with your faculty member, what's going on and what's coming up, just so that there's a written documentation of how your course and partnerships are progressing. We will ask you to track and report out on both yours and your student service hours. So as an institution, as part of the institution, we're required to report out on the number of hours students served throughout the semester. Again, don't worry about it now, coming later. For those of you that are familiar with the Service Learning Expo, starting fall 2018, this is actually going to take a new form, and I don't want to give it away on here because it's still a work in progress, but you will be participating in that process as well as the event and the day of. We'll ask you as a TA to keep accurate records of your course's community partnerships, who your main contacts are, the history of that relationship. We'll ask you to participate in the evaluation process, so both yourself at the end of the semester, but also to help facilitate that process for students with your faculty member. We'll ask you to, and sometimes if you're able, to contribute to the SLOG or the Service Learning blog by either helping us generate ideas or maybe including a reflective piece there. We'll ask you to engage with the street team. We'll talk about what that looks like in a minute, and then also what Basecamp looks like, but we'll use that as a centralized communication tool and a place for you to store some documents. And then lastly, just so you know, it's optional, but you're able to hold office hours in our office suite. We have 2 workstations dedicated to service learning, and we'll get a schedule going so that if you want to use that so that you can just carve time out of your schedule every week, or you want a place where you can come and meet with students or collaborate with other SLTAs, that space is there for you. So it's not required, and some of you might hold office hours other places on campus, and that's okay too, but want to make sure you know that that's a resource for you. I know that was a lot of little pieces. I don't want you to worry about that now, but again, want to put these things on your radar so that when they do come up, you can be like, oh, I kind of remember something like that. Okay, let's dive in now. All right, so let's talk, I'm going to move on. Let's talk about what the Wednesday night SLSL meetings look like. A lot of us talked about this in the interview process, some more than others. But again, these happen every Wednesday night, and typically we'll meet as a large group of about 50 people. So the service learning TAs, service learning team managers, service learning street team. And this space will focus on community building, professional and personal development workshops. And I think one of the benefits of these large group meetings is we do provide dinner. When we're not meeting as a large group, you'll actually be in a smaller group, and that will be facilitated by a service learning team manager. We'll talk about their role in a moment. And that space will look a little different, right? It'll be a different vibe. It'll be probably 4 to 8 of you versus 50 plus. No matter what format that meeting takes, it will begin promptly at 6 p.m. So make sure, if it's not already, that that's in your calendar so that you can arrive and be prepared to start your conversations at 6 to be respectful of everybody's time. The street team will also collaborate with you in this space, either by participating, you generating ideas with you around what they might be able to post on the slog, how they could highlight the work of your course and your partnerships. One thing, and I think again this has been in writing in the application process from the very beginning, these are a compulsory part of our program, kind of high stakes. For those of you that are receiving a stipend, this is tied to your ability to earn your full stipend. Don't worry about the logistics, that's in a separate module. The life happens, right? So if there is an emergency, or you got the flu, please just communicate with us and let us know. Those are excuses. Again, life happens. We get it. We don't want you to bring the flu into our space. We don't want you contaminating, and we want you to get the rest you need. The other acceptable absence for SLSL meetings is if there is a religious observation that evening and you've communicated that in advance. Otherwise, other than those three things, the expectation is that you are there and you are engaged. If you have questions about this now, please let me know. Let us know. We'll also talk about, if you need, or your team manager can talk with you, if you want to know what is not acceptable for an excuse. Exam reviews, co-ops, interviews or prep, other jobs, those are not excused absences. Okay. I probably talked about this a little bit, but your meetings will also be around trainings and check-ins. So I keep talking about team managers, and some of you might be familiar with this concept, some of you are not, but they're essentially senior SLTAs. They've done this before, and they're ready to be your guide, and they're going to end up being your go-to person for a whole bunch of things. So they will both be facilitating meetings and trainings that I mentioned about in those Wednesday nights. They'll be responsible for building community among your small group and across our program. They're there to help you be accountable, right, to the responsibilities that you've agreed to. They're going to encourage participation in the groups. They'll help coach you through challenges. And they'll also be there to celebrate your successes with you. So a lot of what they do is both the individual support as well as the group support and facilitating those spaces so that everyone feels both included and supported. The other group we keep talking about is the Service Learning Street Team, and so they are another student leadership program we have that is not based in the classroom, and like I mentioned before, they'll participate in our large group meetings, and on occasion they'll join your small groups. So their role is really focused around two primary responsibilities. One being leading asset-based community walking tours, so whether that be for a group or individual students, but then also the supplemental promotion of our program. That includes the Service Learning blog or slog, attending and promoting campus and community events, and so forth. So we feel really lucky. They are our newest SL student leader program. This is an older photo, so this is not the group that you will be seeing in this semester, but encourage you to get to know them and think about them as a resource as well. So 2 slides left. You were introduced to the SLTA framework in the first training module, so we don't want you to lose sight of this, right? So we're talking about the expectations, particularly from an administrator perspective, on weekly meetings, communication, relationships, but what that actually looks like in the classroom, those conversations with your partners, the conversations with your faculty members, will both inform and where you fall in the TA framework. And how you kind of move and navigate throughout that space. You'll be doing an activity later that will help you think about specifically your work with partners and faculty members, but don't want you to lose sight of this because this becomes very influential. And finally, we want you to remember, what was your inspiration for applying to the SLTA program? Right? There are dozens and dozens of student leadership opportunities on campus, initiatives, student groups, and for some reason you chose to be a part of this, and for that we are extremely grateful. We know we have a rockstar group coming on board, but particularly when you're thinking about, okay, why am I going to this meeting? Or why, if I'm coming up against this challenge, like, why did I do this? And we want you to think about what was your inspiration. And so not for this cohort, but I believe it was for the last one, I went through all the applications and looked at all the different reasons people applied. And they were inspired to be an SLTA, to support their own students or peers. They had a personal significant service or service learning experience. They want to engage with the community. They want to explore their career and apply learning. They want to be a leader. They want to build community, maybe received mentorship from a faculty member. Maybe their own TA was an inspiration to them. So, again, in those challenging times and when things are feeling really busy with all of the other commitments that you had, we want you to remember what was your inspiration and share that with others, because I think it will be really meaningful for them. So, this wraps up this piece. I know this was quite long, but again, hopefully reviewed all the ins and outs of the expectations that you have as a member of this program.